Okay, guys, I go on another rant today. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know if I'm on fire. But I'm going to talk about democracy, herd mentality, feminism, how we need to get rid of all of it. No more feminism, no more democracy. You're going to like this or you're going to fucking hate it. So, before I let you go to the episode, follow me on Twitter, tstutch1. Email me at tayradio1 at gmail.com. YouTube me. Follow, like, and subscribe at Taylor Space Stutch, Taylor Space Stutch, Stuch. And, yeah, go to my website, tstutch.com. That's it. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's get right into this shit show today, baby. Buckle up. Um, so, I have been reading, and I know I've already said it 100 times, and I feel like such an idiot because before I begin, I was talking for like 10 minutes to nothing. My phone was not recording because I had my head up my ass. But now my head has been taken out of my ass and is looking at my computer screen. So we are on the right track. Thank you for tuning in to Taylor Mother Effin' Radio. Now, let's continue. What I was talking about was Nietzsche. So I've talked about this before. Reading Nietzsche, should I say listening to Nietzsche, because I am too lazy to read with my eyes. I like to read with my ears. Listening to Nietzsche, I have heard some really interesting shit. So some of the interesting points today are how he talks about how I find it so fascinating that he is culturally relevant in today's day and age. So he wrote his writings in the late 1800s. So he was born, I think, in the 1840s, and so that was the time period that he was in. In that time period, he looks at the spread and the increased confidence in democracy as a move, as a paradigm shift to mediocrity. He talks about how under equal rights and the spread of democracy, people become mediocre. What I find so interesting about this, and it could just be the way that the book is being read on Audible, but it sounds like he refers to mediocrity and democracy and equal rights as a very, he's very dismissive of the idea. He doesn't necessarily like the idea of that. And from what I'm getting to, I'm at a point in the book where I think he's starting to talk about how societies actually don't move forward under this kind of thinking, how we don't move forward under this type of understanding. He talks about it as the time of the masses, the era of the masses, and mediocrity and equality. What's so fascinating about this is how applicable it is today. He talks about feminism as well, but I want to talk about this other stuff. So I've talked about herd mentality before, and it really is true. We live in a time of herds. We live in a time of the masses. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe in the United States and across the world, everybody is pretty much controlled by elites. Now, do I think we have more freedom than any other country on earth at the moment? Yes. Do I think we've had more freedom, generally speaking, than many countries in history? Yes. Now, that's going to be debatable because, back in the day, there was less surveillance technology. Probably a lot more people were doing a lot more crazy shit back in the day. But in terms of a civilized context, actually, I don't know. We have a lot of bullshit laws on the books. But and I've said this before 100 times in person, but I am not a democracy guy. Now, I'm not a monarchy dude either, but I am a very limited representative government, but also local representation is best. So I've talked about this kind of under localism and shit, but let's talk about it from a national government perspective. We don't want a big democratic government where 51% of the people can take away the rights of the rest of the people in the nation, right? This is not something that we want. This is one reason also why big national governments that have that legislate for huge populations is really, really problematic, because you have one central authority that could legislate to 300 million people in the case of the United States, that's going to say, hey, this is our one size fits all policy for you in Texas, in New York, in Illinois, in California. And that's not how life works, right? The people in California like crime. The people in California like shit on the streets, right? The people in California love smelling the stench of the plague that runs through their streets. They love looking at needles as they walk to their homes. They love it. Actually, people in California, what they love the most is when they get hot diarrhea dumped on their heads. Okay, so obviously I'm being a little facetious here. And I say a little bit because, let's be honest, if you're from California and you're listening to this, I appreciate that you're listening to this. But you guys got to get your shit together, bro. Not too long ago, I think it was like a week and a half ago, a lady had hot diarrhea poured on her. I don't know if it was in San Francisco or at downtown LA. It was some shithole in California. California is a shithole. You're not going to get me to change my mind, so don't even try. That being said, what I'm really trying to focus on here is representative government. I don't believe in democracy because I don't believe the mob should be able to determine how the rest of the country and society function. Okay? I am very much in favor of limited government. I'm in favor, and that means limited coercion by the people that run the government. So that means if you and me elect people to the government, they should not be able to do whatever we want them to do. In fact, they shouldn't be able to do much if you think about it, especially at the national level. At the national level, the government should be as limited as possible. Fuck all this democracy. Oh, Hillary got 51%. You know what? Thank God for the Electoral College. Thank God we don't have a popular voting system here in the United States. Because if we did, right now we would be getting pegged in our anal cavities by Hillary Clinton. And I am just thankful to the Lord Almighty that that is not happening currently. So, in the United States, we have the Electoral College. What else is interesting about the United States that limits democracy for the good? What limits democracy is we have, aside from that, think about how our senators and our representatives are elected, right? We elect representatives to do things in Congress, and we have an electoral college that's supposed to elect the president, right? So we don't have direct election. We're not supposed to have direct election of anything but the House of Representatives. However, back at the beginning of the 20th century, we added the 17th Amendment to allow direct election of senators, which I don't think we should have done. In fact, I do believe we should repeal the 17th Amendment because it moves us too much towards democracy. Okay? And too many people are too... I don't know what I was going with that, but we should not have to, we should move away. We should not be moving towards a more democratic system. We should be moving away from that. And I don't mean in a monarchical sense, but we should be more at a local sense. So at the national level, I don't want democracy. Fuck that shit, right? At the local level, I'd say let the people at the city, let the people at the state level make more of a decision about how they want their lives to be run. Whether that be a more democratic process, whether that be a less democratic process, whatever that may be. But on the national level, at a country basis, hell no. We should not have this big 51% can vote to take away the wealth of the 49%. You realize that's a lot of people, dude. Imagine if like 155 million people voted to take away the rights of 140 million people. You see, like that's the big problem with democracy is its majority rule, aka mob rule. Now, what's interesting is that the mob can be resentful. The mob of the nation can be resentful and can be and can attack the people that they dislike. And we are seeing that currently, and that you have a bunch of average people. It's okay to be average, but if you're mediocre and average, you cannot force your mediocrity onto the rest of the country, which is what people are trying to do today. So Nietzsche talks about how at that time, in the late 1800s, Europe was moving into an era of the masses, an era of democracy, an era of mediocrity. And I would say that I think that's one of the big struggles that we're in today. We have a bunch of mediocre, son of a bitch people who are resentful of anybody who's better than them. And that is a problem, right? It's actually not a problem to have people better than you. You should always be, if you see someone better than you, you should be able to look up to that person and go, what can I learn from this person, right? What can I gain from this person? Instead, in today's society of equality, as opposed to merit and meritocracy, we are obsessed with everybody getting the same amount of shit. We're obsessed with everybody being average, right? No one can stick their necks outside the herd. Nobody can say anything that goes against the herd mentality. No one can believe anything that goes against the herd. That is the situation we're in the United States, and I think largely in the Western world. And when I say Western world, I mean like in Western Europe, Canada, stuff like that. I'm not as familiar with South America, but that is the place we're in today. And Nietzsche called it. He called it over 100 years ago. And we are in the middle of it today. And I wonder if the current fight that's going on between the radical left postmodernists and everybody else who's just trying to survive, if this fight will end up in a situation where we have to have a strong leader that brings us out of this age of democracy. So let's hear from our sponsors. So currently, the culture in the United States is being hijacked by radical postmodernists who are trying to tear down the society. And of course, they don't have any replacement, except it's so interesting. You have the radical postmodernists who are saying like, hey, everything is made up. There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as as reality. Reality is just what we make it. Everything's a social construct. And then right behind them are the radical Marxists who are like, we need to confiscate all business and production and bring it to the hands of the government and redistribute all the wealth so that nobody is poor or whatever. And it seems as though the people that are pushing the postmodern Marxist kind of bullshit line, it seems like their brains have been completely eaten alive. A friend of mine, not a friend, I can't believe I just said that. I don't know the guy, a guy named Gad Sad. Online you can find him. He calls this behavior by the radical leftists ostrich parasitic syndrome, because it's like a parasite that eats their head and they stick their heads in the ground because they don't want to see the reality of the world that they're in. So they just put their head in the ground. They don't have to deal with it, blah, blah, blah. So, what's interesting about the world is the feminist movement. So I know I'm kind of on a fucking rant these last couple days. I hope you guys can travel with me on this. Some of you are going to like it. Some of you are not. The thing about the feminist thingy. So Nietzsche, and I need to go back and listen to this again, but he perfectly describes some of the issues going on with feminism. Perfectly described it. And he talked about how, one thing he talks about is how the biggest issue for women is other women. And I thought that that was so accurate, that the people that are most harsh to other women are women themselves, that it's not men. And I 100% agree. I 100% agree. First off, we all know women, whether it be ex-girlfriends, current girlfriends, wives, whatever, sisters, we all know how the female pecking orders are very vicious, right? They tend to not be physically confrontational, but they tend to go after each other's reputation. So instead of being like, hey, you're talking shit, you want to get hit? They're like, oh, you're talking shit. Oh, well, guess what? I heard about Mary. Mary had sex with Jennifer's boyfriend, even though that never really happened. Now, all of a sudden, Mary is looked at as a whore. And, oh, whores are, once you're a whore, then you can't come back into society. So look at us guys, man. Us guys, we're basic, dude. We're simple creatures. It's like, for us, if a chick has gotten around a bit, that's really not a big deal for us so much as we're not the ones that are like, oh, you're a slut, you're a slut. A lot of girls hear slut, get a lot of slut shaming from their mother. They get slut shamed from their mom and other women, right? And to be honest, it's understandable to a degree. There seems to be some really interesting evolutionary reasons why that might be the case. That, for example, if a woman goes out of her way to be too loose with her morals, right, then that ups the ante for the other women to do the same. So before birth control, think about it like this way, guys. Before birth control, if a woman went out and had sex, there was, especially before condoms. So let's go back a few hundred years ago. Before birth control, pill, and condoms, if a woman had sex, like, she was probably going to get pregnant unless there was something wrong with the guy or the girl. Okay? And so if a woman is known for getting around and a guy and women and guys start to expect women to do that, then that can be a problem for other women. So other women are trying to find good guys. Well, if those good guys are mistakenly getting with women who are what we would call a slut, then the good women get crowded out of the market of good guys because the sluts are running around taking all the good guys. And the sluts aren't good. But guys are pretty weak-minded, so we're going to go with the slut. So now, it makes sense that other women in the group would slut shame her because it's like, look, if you go out and you spread your puss all over the God's green earth, then that makes it harder for us to get guys without giving up our puss as well. So, and when we give up our puss, we have a high chance of getting pregnant. And we have a high chance of getting a disease. And when we get pregnant, a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people used to die in childbirth. Women used to die in childbirth a lot more commonly than they do now. So are you trying to do that? Right? Women aren't trying to get pregnant and die in childbirth in the 1600s. You see what I'm getting at? So it makes sense that women would slut shame each other like, hey guys, we got to keep our pants on because we ain't trying to get pregnant one thing and have the guy run out on us. And then also, we don't want to set the standard of just willy-nilly giving up our muffins. And then before you know it, we're all dying in childbirth, and and if we don't die in childbirth, then we're running around with kids and, we don't know where the husbands are or the fathers are because they just fled, they went to the new world or some shit. So there are good reasons why women have enacted some of these controls on other women throughout the ages. But nowadays, of course, all that shit's gone. But now they want to blame it all on guys, right? And it's so funny. Nietzsche really calls a lot of this stuff 100 years before it gets to where it is. He talked about how when you give in, how they will continue to ask for more and for more and for more. And it's so funny. It went from we want the right to vote to the future is female, right? How insane is that? Hey, we want equal rights. We want equal pay. The future is female. That's quite a jump, dude. And they don't even hide it anymore. What is that shit, man? Let me take a sip of my coffee. So, yeah, I have relatives that have worn those shirts. The future is female. It's so funny because you know what? If there was like, if there was a natural disaster, I think I've said this before. If there was a natural disaster that took out if somebody blew up birth control factories, like instantly, the world goes back to the past. I've also said, I think before, what's funny is all it would take for men and women's roles to be reversed back to the way they used to be would be if somebody dropped an EMP over the US, right? So if there was an electromagnetic bomb that blew up over the United States and all the electricity disappeared, right? I like how I say that, the electricity disappeared. If everything that ran on electricity ceased to function and we had to start doing things by hand all over again and our machines didn't work, instantly the whole idea of female equality and the future is female and, all of this shit is out the window, dude. Out the window. Everyone talking about how there's toxic masculinity. Dude, when you don't have electricity in your home and you have a baby, or even if you're just by yourself, say you have a boyfriend and you have no electricity, there's no electricity, right? So TVs don't work, phones don't work, computers don't work. Do you want a man who is like, oh, honey, I think that we should all just be the same. There's no difference between men and women have been societally oppressed by the patriarchy. And I just think that in all honesty, you should go to work and I should stay home. Well, there's not always anything wrong with that. There's not necessarily wrong with the stay-at-home dad. But does a woman want some puss-ass guy who is like, oh, the future is female? Or when the power goes out, does she want a guy that's like, listen, you stay here, I'm going to get us some fucking firewood, I'll be back in 5 minutes, right? Or if a guy is like, hey, I've got the gun, we're going out, I got to go see if I can get us some food, you're going to stay here. You want a guy that takes charge, that when the power goes out, toxic masculinity is a virtue. All right. But feminism has gone so far, we have removed ourselves so far from the natural constraints of the world that these retarded feminists believe that the natural tendencies of males are all toxic. And all of this shit was seen by a philosopher over 100 years ago. He saw how this was going to be. And he also talked about how there was going to be all these enabling men that were going to allow it to happen. So before anyone, people probably think I'm some woman-hating dude. And that's not the case. I don't hate women. When it comes to, equality, I mean, I am a modern guy. So do I think women should have the right to vote? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding, sort of. But no, do I think that, women should not have freedoms? Absolutely not. I'm not in that kind of guy that thinks that women should not have freedoms. I think everyone should have freedom. But we've come far away from freedom, and now we're in the realm of privileges in America. So anyway, this was a weird rant today. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it. You can email me at tayradio1@gmail.com, tayradio1@gmail.com. Go to my website, tstuch.com, tstuch.com. You can go to my YouTube and subscribe at taylor-stuch.com, taylor-stuch.com. Oh, that's not .com, it's just on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at tstuch1. So thank you, guys.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.